Yes, Shedeur Sanders was a 5th-round pick, but he ain't never been a 5th-round talent. That's why in his mind, he is saying, I can change a franchise if you give me the opportunity to. Right now, Cleveland is not doing that.
We've got news.
Got news.
About my Cleveland Browns. We've got an oblique problem.
No.
Obliques are big deals, especially when it's your quarterback. Now, he might be 4th on the depth chart, but he was number 1 in the preseason game last week, and he did a great job.
When Shedeur Sanders was put out there with the proper talent around him, he excelled.
And that's what you asked for. You know, that's what you asked for within the game. If I could go back and do anything, I mean, it's always everything in life if you had that chance, but we don't have the luxury to travel back in time. As a kid, I want to go back and do things differently. So overall, of course, you know, you wish you can, but in the battle of the moment, in the heat of the battle, you know, you want to be that alpha, you want to be that dog, you want to be out there in that final 2-minute drive. So, you know, of course, small things, of course, frustrate, but that's what happens, you know, when you want a player to be able to.
Did the Cleveland Browns ever really plan to give Shedeur Sanders a fair shot? Because from the outside, it looked like a quarterback competition. But once you dig into the snap counts, the reps, and the lineups, it starts to look more like a scripted performance. One where the ending was already decided long before the cameras rolled. And now, with former Browns QB Robert Griffin III calling out the entire setup, fans are wondering, was this a legit QB battle, or was Shedeur Sanders just set up to fail? We're diving into the controversy behind Cleveland's so-called competition, the hidden details that are sparking outrage, and why people believe Shedeur never stood a chance from the start. Let's break it all down. From the very beginning, something about the Browns' quarterback competition didn't add up. Publicly, the franchise announced it was a wide-open race.
Shedeur Sanders has an oblique injury. That is not good. I do not like this. I hate this because I want to see more reps for Shedeur Sanders.
4 quarterbacks in the room. No favorites, no guaranteed starters. Everyone competing for the same job. On paper, that sounds fair. That sounds like opportunity. But when the game started and the practice reps were tallied, the illusion fell apart. Shedeur Sanders, a new face in the NFL with massive college hype and a legendary football pedigree, was labeled as one of the contenders. But if you watched closely, he was never really in the mix. While Dillon Gabriel was getting meaningful snaps in practice, often running with the first or second team offense, Shedeur was working with guys who wouldn't even make the roster. Literally. Most of the offensive linemen he played behind were cut the next day. Shedeur wasn't just fighting for his spot, he was set up to fail with second-rate protection, little chemistry, and zero support. The reps weren't just unfair, they were minimal.
How can you get a proper assessment of Shedeur Sanders if you don't allow him to play with the same players that Dillon Gabriel played with?
Or even give him the same opportunity of like running the 2-minute drill at the end of the game.
Which is just, again, doesn't make sense.
He didn't get the same volume of snaps, didn't get put in any high-pressure developmental situations, no late-game 2-minute drill, no third-down packages. Just garbage time minutes behind a crumbling line while the spotlight stayed on Gabriel and the veterans. And that's not opinion, that's backed by numbers. Several Browns analysts looked at the team's snap count charts and practice rotations, and Shedeur was consistently buried. If this was a competition, he wasn't on the same playing field. It's one thing to lose a battle, it's another not to even be allowed to fight. The Browns coaching staff may have made it sound like an open race, but what they did, who they put on the field, how they structured practices that told a different story.
You set yourself up for that. So I say that in closing that I believe the Browns need to trade either Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders. Because right now, it's not about it not being fair for either guy.
A story where Shedeur, a 5th-round draft pick, was put at the bottom of the pecking order from day one, not based on performance, not based on potential, but based on where his name popped up on draft day. Fans started noticing. Clips circulated showing Shedeur scrambling behind a crumbling pocket, a situation that no quarterback could succeed in. And yet, these were the moments some used to evaluate him, to suggest he wasn't ready, or that he didn't have it. But here's the truth. You can't measure someone's talent if you never give them the tools to compete. That's not a fair fight. That's a setup. And it didn't take long before others within the NFL community started speaking out, questioning what the Browns were actually doing behind closed doors. Including a familiar name who knows exactly what it's like to play quarterback in Cleveland, And what he said? It shook the whole conversation.
2 touchdowns. Shined on the big stage. I know it was a preseason, but it was the most watched preseason game in over a decade. Shined. But when they put him out there with talent of guys that are not going to be on NFL rosters, that was the result.
When former NFL star and one-time Cleveland quarterback Robert Griffin III stepped into the conversation, everything changed. RG3 is more than just a former player. He's a respected analyst with first-hand experience of how NFL teams operate behind closed doors. So when he said out loud what fans had only been whispering, the situation exploded. On a national broadcast, Griffin didn't mince words. He straight up accused the Browns of mishandling the QB competition, not just unfairly treating Shedeur Sanders, but orchestrating the entire quarterback race like a PR stunt. His main point? How can you evaluate a quarterback if you never give him a real chance to succeed? Griffin brought receipts. He studied the snap counts and publicly called out the lie being sold to fans. People claimed Shedeur had played with the same group of players as Dillon Gabriel, but RG3 corrected that instantly. He pointed out that Shedeur was actually working with the 3rd, 4th, and even 5th string units, not the primary offense Gabriel had, and that detail matters. Think about it. If the linemen blocking for you are on the verge of being cut, and your wide receivers won't even make it past training camp, how are you supposed to do anything meaningful with the ball?
How many sacks did Shedeur have in the game?
More than 5.
No, he had 5.
Yeah, 5.
He had 5 sacks in the game, playing behind the 3, 4, and 5 offensive line. 2 of those sacks, he held the ball too long. The other ones, he never had a chance. Wide receivers, did he play with the same wide receivers that Dillon Gabriel did?
No.
No, he didn't.
RG3 noted that Shedeur was sacked 5 times in one preseason appearance. Sure, 2 of them were on him, holding the ball too long. But the rest? Shedeur barely had time to take a 3-step drop before getting swallowed alive. And still, people used that performance to discredit his talent. That's what set RG3 off. He wasn't defending Shedeur just because of his name. He was responding to a bigger pattern, a system that pretends to compete, while quietly protecting its favorites. And Griffin even went a step further, saying what most were afraid to. If you can't give the guy a fair shot, trade him. Not just because Shedeur deserved better, but because keeping quarterbacks in a fake competition devalues everyone in that room. It's not just unfair to Sanders, it's toxic for the entire team. Quarterbacks need leadership, clarity, and a path forward. If your 3rd string is treated like he's invisible, and your 4th string never gets a chance to rise, how strong is your QB room really? Griffin's comments hit hard because they pulled the curtain back. He said what fans had been feeling, that this was never an evaluation. It was a showcase. The Browns had already made decisions behind the scenes. Shedeur was just a background character in their script. But fans aren't buying it, and insiders are starting to speak up. The receipts are public. The lineup doesn't lie.
So when people say, hey, they're setting him up for failure, this is what they're talking about. I believe the Browns have good intentions for all the quarterbacks in their room. I don't believe that their execution.
And for many, this feels less like football and more like damage control. What happened next? It only made the situation even more obvious. If you're a quarterback trying to make a name for yourself in the NFL, your first preseason reps are everything. They're your chance to prove you belong not just to fans, but to coaches making million-dollar decisions. But for Shedeur Sanders, his chance wasn't just limited, it was sabotaged. When Shedeur finally got his turn on the field, people expected to see flashes of that Colorado swagger, the kind of precision he showed on national stages in college. And why wouldn't they? He had the talent. He had the vision. What he didn't have was help. Instead of suiting up behind the Browns' 2nd or even 3rd offensive line, Sanders played with a unit that most fans had never even heard of. 4th and 5th string linemen, guys fighting for practice squad invites or preparing for life outside of football. And no, that's not an exaggeration. Many of those players were waived the very next day. Let that sink in. This QB competition put Sanders behind an offensive line so unstable, the majority of them weren't in the locker room 24 hours later. That's the kind of support system he had to work with while being evaluated. And the results? Predictable. Shedeur got sacked 5 times in a single game. 2 of those were on him. He held the ball too long, trying to make something out of nothing. But the rest? He didn't stand a chance. There's only so much a quarterback can do when defenders are in your face before your receivers even finish their routes. It wasn't just the O-line either. The wideouts around him were equally shaky players with zero chemistry or timing. Some ran the wrong routes. Others weren't even targeted. It wasn't football, it was a setup. And here's the wild part. This all took place during one of the most watched preseason games in over a decade. The spotlight was huge. The pressure was massive. And the Browns sent Sanders out there like a test subject, not with a team, but with spare parts. So when critics looked at his performance and questioned if he was NFL ready, it was never a fair assessment. No other rookie QB in that room was asked to prove themselves in chaos like this. Imagine handing someone a broken down car, then blaming them when it doesn't win the race. That's what happened. It wasn't coaching. It wasn't development. It was containment. Strip a playmaker of everything he needs, toss him into the fire, and then say, see, he's not good enough. But people saw through that. Because despite all of it, Sanders still showed moments of brilliance, glimpses. The footwork, the poise, the accuracy under pressure. Even in the mess, he showed why people still believe in his NFL future. It just left people wondering, if he can shine inside a broken system, what would he look like in a real one? And funny enough, we've already seen the answer to that question. Before anyone writes off Shedeur Sanders based on what happened during Cleveland's preseason shuffle, they need to look at the full picture. Because the truth is, we've already seen what Shedeur can do when he's actually given something to work with. Start with college. Go back and watch that very first game with Colorado under Coach Prime last year. National stage, massive expectations, and what did Shedeur do? He dropped 510 yards and 4 touchdowns like it was nothing. Calm, surgical, and in full control. That wasn't a fluke, that was a preview. But even beyond college, there's already evidence in the NFL of what happens when Sanders has real teammates around him. In previous preseason windows, during joint practices or scrimmages, where he briefly ran with solid offensive units, he flashed immediately. 2 touchdowns, clean footwork, tight windows, zero fear. And that wasn't just hype, it happened during the most watched preseason game in over 10 years. Under pressure, under lights, and Shedeur showed up like someone born for the stage. That matters. Because while some quarterbacks get weeks, even months of first-team reps to develop chemistry and comfort, Shedeur showed his potential in just a handful of plays, under chaotic conditions. Let's be real. You don't accidentally show elite pocket presence and high-level field awareness if you're not built for this. You don't throw precision back shoulder fades on the move if you're not NFL caliber. And you sure don't keep calm while the defense is collapsing around you unless you've trained for that moment your whole life. He didn't just hang in there. He thrived when given the chance. So when critics say, well, he didn't do enough, it begs the question, how much is enough when you're only getting scraps? Because Shedeur wasn't just competing, he was climbing an uphill battle with ankle weights on. And the most frustrating part? He wasn't even supposed to be a 5th-round pick. That's what RG3 said, and he's not alone. A growing number of scouts believe that if his last name wasn't Sanders or if Coach Prime hadn't drawn so much media attention, Shedeur would have gone far higher in the draft. But here's the twist. Shedeur knows that, and that's where his confidence comes from. It's not ego, it's preparation. He's not out here begging for favors. All he's asking for is the same opportunity these other young QBs are getting. The same reps, the same teammates, the same fair evaluation. Because when it's even, he wins. And that's why so many fans, players, and analysts have started to speak up. Not because they're fans of the name, but because they've seen glimpses. Just enough to know something's off. So now the question's louder than ever. If Shedeur can shine in limited windows, why did the Browns close the door before he was even through it? Well, some people think they already know the answer. At this point, with everything that's happened, it's hard not to ask the question that's been hanging in the air. Was this ever really about performance? Or was it politics from the start? Because the Browns can say all day long that they wanted a fair quarterback competition. They can use buzzwords like equal opportunity and open battle, but everything they did tells a different story. Let's break it down. Before training camp even started, reports suggest the coaching staff already had internal rankings. Whispers around the locker room hinted that Dillon Gabriel had the inside track. Kenny Pickett was brought in as backup insurance. Joe Flacco, well, he's the evergreen veteran. That left Shedeur boxed out. But here's the thing. If the position really was up for grabs like the head coach allegedly claimed then draft position, media pressure or preseason politics shouldn't matter. You judge guys based on the tape, not headlines. The Cleveland Browns claimed they were doing that. But where were the equal reps? Where were the fair matchups? Players talk. Staff notices. And when one guy keeps getting the raw end bad offensive lines, weak receivers, 0 first-team snaps, you don't have to say it out loud. Everyone sees who's being quietly sidelined. And here's where it gets even messier. Some believe Shedeur wasn't even brought in to compete. According to online chatter and a few behind-the-scenes reports, there's speculation the Browns only signed him to spark media attention, to please the Dion fans, to make it look like they were embracing young, marketable talent without ever planning to develop him. Essentially, Shedeur may have been part of a marketing move, not a football decision. Now, obviously, that's still speculation, but if that's even half true, it's one of the worst-kept secrets in the building. And it explains a lot about why the opportunities never matched the promises. Players like Shedeur have a target on their back the second they're drafted late. People want to label him a celebrity pick, want to doubt his drive, want to say he's there just because of his father. But what no one talks about is that Shedeur backed up the hype with production. He just never got a level field to prove it in Cleveland. And if you look around the NFL, it's not the first time this has happened. Teams say one thing, do another, and wrap it all in polished press conferences. But the tape doesn't lie, and neither do the reps. So yes, maybe the Browns liked the optics of a QB competition, but they never wanted another controversy at the top spot. And sticking a young, high-profile QB like Shedeur in that mix, that was never part of the real plan. They needed him to be quiet, backup material, rookie depth, not a legit contender. But here's the problem with that plan. Shedeur doesn't stay quiet, he competes. And he's staring up at quarterbacks who haven't even earned the spot they're holding. One in particular that fans still can't believe is ahead of him. If you ask fans who's had the quietest rise in the Browns quarterback room, one name surprisingly keeps floating to the top, Kenny Pickett. The same Kenny Pickett who was unimpressive during the entire offseason. The same Pickett who, according to insiders, didn't outwork Shedeur, didn't outperform Dylan, and certainly didn't light up the preseason. Yet somehow, he stayed ahead of Sanders the entire time. No buzz, no pressure, no challenge, and no explanation. From the outside looking in, Pickett's spot on the depth chart seemed untouchable. He didn't have to fight for it, didn't have to go out there and prove it against starters or even second stringers. While others rotated through the gauntlet dodging sacks, reacting on broken plays, Pickett quietly stayed in the number 2 role like it was predetermined. And that's what frustrated people the most. Sanders wasn't demanding to be the starter. He wasn't trying to jump over Flacco overnight, but what he and his fans were asking for? Clarity, fairness, real reps. A shot to show he belonged above players who hadn't earned the seat they were sitting in. Instead, he watched Pickett get a free pass right to the top half of the roster. It's not even about Kenny versus Shedeur, it's about the perception. Because when you've got one quarterback grinding in the trenches, proving himself with every snap, and another who didn't do much all camp but still walks into the regular season with a backup role locked in, you can't call that a competition. And what did Pickett do to justify that spot? No meaningful playmaking, no breakout moments, no flashes of greatness. Yet somehow the message was clear. Don't ask questions, he's one of our guys. That's the double standard Shedeur's been fighting since the draft. Not just trying to earn his position, but constantly having to outperform players who were never expected to prove anything. And what makes it worse? The Browns could have avoided all of this. If the team just named their starter and backup after the draft, like many thought they would, there wouldn't be this cloud hanging over everything. Fans were told this was an even playing field, but the deeper they looked, the more it resembled a set list. And Shedeur? He never stood a chance on that playlist. But while the Browns were busy playing favorites, one person made sure Shedeur stayed grounded, the one voice who's guided him through every level of football. And that person? He's got a legendary name, and a message that Shedeur's been repeating for years now. Stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. Through all the controversy, the politics, and the broken promises, Shedeur Sanders hasn't said a word. No media meltdowns, no angry rants, no social media subtweets. Just quiet work, silent patience. And that's no coincidence, because from the beginning he was trained for moments like this. His father, Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, isn't just a legend on the field. He's mastered the mental game off it. And his message to Shedeur has been the same from college to the pros. Stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. It sounds simple, But that line carries weight. It means, don't beg for your shot. Prepare for it. Don't complain, grind. Don't match the energy of doubters, just outperform them when the opportunity comes. And that mindset? It's exactly what's keeping Shedeur in the right frame of mind while most rookies would have already snapped. When you're built under pressure, raised with discipline, and coached by someone who's seen every dirty side of this game, you don't fold when you're overlooked. You focus. Deion Sanders knew this would happen. He warned Shedeur. The NFL isn't always a meritocracy, it's a business. A machine full of narratives, favoritism, and unwritten rules. Some players get drafted into golden opportunities, others are set up to fail intentionally, but Prime's belief never wavered. If you're truly great, they won't be able to ignore you forever. And Shedeur clearly believes that too. Every report from camp says the same thing. He shows up early, studies harder, encourages teammates, even when he's not getting rewarded with reps. That's rare, especially for someone with a name like his and the hype to match. He easily could have trashed the Browns online. He didn't. He could have demanded a trade already. He hasn't. Because while most rookies are rushing to the spotlight, Shedeur's focused on perfect timing. Whether he earns his moment in Cleveland or it comes somewhere else, he'll be ready because he's been ready. And when that day comes, he's not just playing for a starting job, he's playing to prove a system wrong. And honestly, that kind of fire is more dangerous than anything you can teach. That's the edge that makes guys unforgettable. Shedeur doesn't need a shortcut, he just needs the door to open. And when it does, you better believe he's bringing receipts. But until then, there's one last question hanging in the air, one that could change everything. What if Cleveland never planned to keep him at all? At this point, it doesn't feel like a matter of if, it feels like when. Because after everything we've seen, the unequal reps, the mysterious depth chart decisions, the clear disconnect between what the Browns said and what they actually did, it feels like Shedeur Sanders' future in Cleveland is already evaporating. And if we're being real, it might be better that way. Right now, the Browns' quarterback room is a mess. It's crowded, it's quiet on the outside, and chaotic behind the scenes. And when you have 4 quarterbacks fighting for airtime with no real leadership structure in place, you don't just slow down player development, you destroy it. This current situation isn't helping anyone. Not Joe Flacco, stuck navigating yet another rookie-heavy locker room. Not Dylan Gabriel, who may look like the backup on paper but feels one bad snap away from being trade bait. Not Kenny Pickett, who's somehow both protected and underwhelming. And definitely not Shedeur Sanders, the guy with the most upside but the least opportunity. It's not just a waste of talent, it's bad strategy. That's exactly why mounting pressure is building around the Browns front office to make a move. Trade somebody, create clarity, give these guys real chances to grow before stagnation turns into toxicity. And if a trade does go down, people are already saying what many are thinking. Shedeur should be the one to get out of there. Not because he's not good enough, but because he's too good to be waiting in the shadows. Give him a team that's not afraid to actually develop quarterbacks. Give him leadership that matches his grind. Give him a real system, real teammates, and watch what happens. There's already online buzz about teams keeping an eye on his situation. Some believe that an early trade before week 1 might even be in discussion. Because once you get past the headlines and the politics, front offices know the truth. NFL-ready quarterbacks don't last long on the sidelines. Especially ones with Shedeur's pedigree, IQ, and big game DNA. But if Cleveland lets him waste a whole season waiting behind flip-flop depth charts and locker room politics, that says everything. Shedeur doesn't need pity. He doesn't need a viral highlight. He just needs one team that sees what Deion sees, and what so many fans are now starting to see too. And if that team's not Cleveland, that's fine. Because when it's your time, it's your time. And Shedeur's time is coming, faster than anyone in that building is ready for. So now the question is simple. Was Shedeur Sanders set up to fail? Or did the Browns just underestimate the wrong guy? Drop your take in the comments because this situation is far from over. Hit that like button if you think Shedeur deserves better. And if you're riding with 12 no matter where he lands, make sure to subscribe. We're following every step of his journey. Until next time, stay tapped in.